The voice of sharing, Durian ASEAN.
ASEAN Breakfast Call. First and foremost news from Southeast Asia.
Hi, good morning everybody. This is Gowri.
And this is Grace.
Grace is back from a long trip in Korea.
Yes, to me it was pretty short because it was just a week, but I guess during ASEAN it was a long gap for me to leave Korea. Well, it was a chance for me to update myself with a lot of news regarding politics and entertainment from any areas in Korea, and it was
But you were really there for a performance, or was it just seeing family and stuff?
It was more to visit my parents because I didn't see them for nearly 3 years.
3 years.
So I thought it was time to go, and otherwise I don't know when will
When
the
is it gonna
next
happen?
time. Yeah.
So it was all good. You saw them. You're happy now.
Yeah, they are
And you're
very
back in
happy.
work.
I pretty rested well quite there as well. Yeah, but at the same time, Korea, it's there are a lot of news that I didn't know about, and it was a good chance for me to update myself. And one of them is one of the highlighted news and one of the heated news in Korea is nowadays is about the meeting between North Korea and South Korea. That on the last day of Asian Game, there was a sudden visit from North Korea, and there were 3 leaders, and they're in the highest rank. Actually, the leader didn't appear, but then all the
Okay.
leaders came, and it was all sudden. So I don't know whether it was a test from North Korea side on South Korea how we are going to handle the situation or not. But then we're expecting a positive feedback.
Is it a hint of them for a reconciliation? Are they in peace talks, or what was the meeting for?
They came in the form of, with the attitude of being like really positive, but then there are lots of professors and then like people like analyzing the situations at the moment. Yeah.
And what's happening in Malaysia right now, or today, is actually the long-awaited Budget 2015.
Yes.
And it will be tabled and presented in the Parliament today. And everyone is looking forward to this. They want to know if what are the aspects that the government will be spending on, which aspect will they be cutting back on, and also, of course, the thing that everyone look forward to the most is the bonus for all the government servants that are working in the sector.
Well, we did talk about the budget 2014 before regarding what they've done so far.
Actually, we gave 2 complete weeks. We
Yeah.
dedicated 2 weeks for budget discussions, and this budget is supposedly also heading towards the balanced budget 2020, according to our Prime Minister Datuk Seri Najib Tun Razak, and also in accordance to his aim for a high-income nation. And also, he did mention that this year's budget will be pro-rakyat and it will look to reduce the high cost of living.
Definitely, we need to look into all these problems right now because there's a lot of gap between the high class and lower class income people, and also when it comes to cost of living, there's a lot of gaps between these 2 classes. So it's something the government has to really look into, and then to reach a vision 2020. There are lots of points like they really need to consider all those lower middle income people in terms of how buying houses and then employment. So it'll be a good chance that today is something really big in Malaysia that they will really look forward to hear it.
And another thing that was being stressed was that the budget in our country is not as transparent, especially if you compare it to Singapore. The breakdown of it is much clearer and it's a lot easier to understand, whereas if you look at the Malaysian budget website, there isn't much information available. So we have to pretty much wait for it and see what our Prime Minister says later on. And hopefully it does address all the pressing issues right now, because especially based on the interview we had yesterday apart from the rising cost of living, which is a major problem, the of course housing prices going up. It's difficult to get a house, difficult to get a car. Unemployment is also a major issue in this country. So there's it, and also public transportation, that a lot of people have been complaining, saying that yes, we want to save money, we want to take the public transport, but it's not convenient, it's not accessible that easily. So what are you going to do about it? So I guess we will find out later on in the afternoon.
And one of the expected topics from 2015 budget will be GST, of course. So let's see what our
Yes,
Prime
that too.
Minister. Yeah.
Thanks for bringing that up.
So let's see how our Prime Minister will bring up the topic and share.
And another thing that this country has been shaken about is the bomb blast that happened yesterday at Bukit Bintang. And it was a very sudden thing. Even when we saw the news, it was hard to believe, because this is not something common in Malaysia to have bomb blast
Definitely.
happening.
And then when I heard it, I was in Korea and I was like, is it true? And I read the news and it was, like you mentioned, it was really sudden, and then there were a few people injured, and then one man died, and the 4 cars were damaged.
And one of the people injured is also a Singaporean, and one car jockey has actually died on the spot. And our Home Minister Datuk Seri Zahid Hamidi is calling on to the public to remain calm. Investigations are ongoing, and they will catch the perpetrators and punish them accordingly. But for now, we just have to be patient and wait to see what happens.
But all this news has made public wonder what's the cause of it. The bomb in Malaysia, it's something uncommon. Unlike many other countries outside, it really did happen in Malaysia. So it did actually make all the public wonder what actually made them to install this bomb under the car.
And what's really sad about this is some of our local tabloids have blamed this on Muslim extremists, and we always thought that that is something that the Western media does. But Malaysian media is no different apparently from these people. They are attributing this to the extremist group, which is really unfair, because we really don't know who did it and we don't know what happened yet. So it's not fair to say, oh, was it this person? Was it that person? All these speculations is totally unnecessary, and we just have to wait and find out and to hear about it from our ministers and police.
Really hope to hear from them really, really, really soon.
And also, according to what we discussed yesterday, which was actually the AEC, ASEAN Economic Community, 80% of firms actually support AEC, and they would love to be a part of it.
And also, AEC as a good business opportunity, and they also believe it will accelerate growth in their industries. And the Vietnam News Agency report, according to the site survey. But the same percentage of respondents said they are bracing for tougher competition once the AAC comes into force in the late 2015.
And what's interesting about this is that AEC, the importance of AEC is that it's used to complement one another towards maximizing and widening benefits, and to also create a freer trade among the region, our ASEAN region. And they've also stressed on the importance of the English language, because there are 10 countries and we have a very, very
it's really
diverse culture. We have so many different languages, and we have all agreed actually to use English as our medium of conversing. But all the countries, most of them, they're still not very fluent in English, and this is something that is being highlighted here, because AEC is happening pretty soon in 2015. So and we are still not that proficient in English yet. So how are we gonna go about carrying out our moderation, our talks, our dialogues if we haven't mastered English yet?
That'll be one of the challenging point among ASEAN countries when it comes to uniting it in one language, English, which is English.
And how are things like in Korea, for example? Are people fluent in English? Do they go for it as their first choice?
Yes, that's under our education system where English is very important. It's featured very significantly. However, we still converse in Korea. That's our national language and official language in Korea. But I believe South Korea is also part of ASEAN country, and when it comes to uniting the language all together, it'll be something very challenging. Not even Korea, but Japan as well, because all these people are not used to speaking an English, and to achieve the one point of speaking English all together with other countries will definitely be something a different side when it comes to education system.
And in Malaysia, of course, it depends whether you're from the urban area or you're from the outskirts, from a smaller town. People in the urban area, of course, tend to resort to speaking English, and they actually choose English as their first choice of language when they're communicating with their fellow Malaysians. And of course, we speak Malay as well. We speak Malay and English, and we also have Tamil. We have Chinese dialects. We have a lot of other language, really, if you want to look at the entire country. But we are, of course, slowly getting there, and our English proficiency is hopefully improving, and we are still contemplating on whether or not to switch science and maths back to English. So that will play a huge part in AEC as well when it comes to science and math. And well, hopefully we do focus on English, and of course without neglecting our official language, which is Bahasa Melayu, Bahasa Melayu or Bahasa Malaysia. And it will all be accordance to the AEC in 2015.
Definitely, and then like you mentioned, it will really hopefully, complement one another towards maximizing and widening the benefits and from freer trade. Also makes reach the point to actually understand each other better, and then to be able to trade and then also improved economical wise.
And another country which came up with a pretty shocking news, which turned out to be a false alarm, was China. And we actually thought yesterday that China has overtaken the United States as the world's top economy, but that was actually a false news that was reported. And turns out that China is still number 2, and the United States is of course number 1.
I wonder why the news was released in a false way.
Well, China has been trying to catch up for so long. It's since many years ago, always in the newspapers, in magazines. It's always between US and China who's going to be on top, who's going to catch up with one another, even in terms of cell phone production, car production. In so many ways, they're always competing, and they're always like as they would say, just neck to neck, trailing each other close behind. And it seems that China, probably somebody was speculating just to give everyone a shock or a wake-up call, like, hey, this could happen.
That was definitely a wake-up call.
You can just wake up tomorrow and China could have taken over the world.
Because definitely China and US, these two are giant, countries when it comes to economy. And also, to add more to your point, it will be China's gross domestic product will climb to $17.6 trillion this year, while US grows to $17.4 trillion dollars. And also IMF projections showed yesterday that the one major the comparison is based on the purchasing power parity, which uses the exchange rates that adjust for price differences of the same goods between nations. So even if the gross domestic product of China is slightly higher than US. Like you mentioned, the economical wise, still US is still stronger than China itself.
And also the US remains the biggest by the more common and widely accepted measure. So it seems that it was also the factor of how they were measuring the economy, and apparently some factors were not taken into account when they actually announced China as the world's top economy. So now that they redid it, and it seems that US remains as the top economy in the world. So if China wants to catch up, maybe not yet, but they're very, very close behind. So, well, if they work just a little harder, they might be able to catch up and just, take over the world.
This definitely shows how China is eager to become number one, or one nation when it comes to economic field, and by releasing this false news via media has did shock the public itself. But after they just overnight, it found out it was false news.
And also, recently we have the Thailand Prime Minister, who is, of course, Prayuth Chan-o-cha, who is the leader of the military coup. He has visited Myanmar to discuss about migrant workers and border security.
And Myanmar recently has been the hot spot for many countries in terms of investment, economic, and helping all these people to improve their improve and also in the nationwide. So Prime Minister visited Myanmar, and this has brought a pretty positive movement between Myanmar and Thailand.
However, it is his first official trip abroad, actually, as the Thai Prime Minister since he took power in the military coup. And the first country he decided to visit was Myanmar, because apparently they are facing a lot of difficulties in terms of Burmese migrant workers. And of course, they enter the country illegally and they try to look for a job. It's no different from what's happening in Malaysia. And they're facing the same problem, which is why he went to meet Myanmar, and he wants to address this issue and try to solve it as soon as possible, as effectively as possible. And the most pressing issue, he said, is that the migrant workers have spent so much money to gain the legal status, but all the money always goes to the agent. They always promise you that we're going to give you this, we're going to give you that, but eventually nothing happens, and they are just being exploited and being worked to the maximum, and they don't get what they were promised.
Yes, so these issues of migrant workers, it has become a quite leading topic when it comes to Myanmar. So that's why Thai PM, the leader, has visited Myanmar to look into the situation and then more carefully and to solve to look for the better solution for this.
And if you remember, there were a couple of British tourists who were killed in Thailand, and apparently that also goes back to two Myanmar men who are being accused for killing those two tourists. So that was also one of the reasons why he wanted to hasten his visit to Myanmar to address this issue immediately.
Because that did affect a tourism side when that incident happened in Thailand.
It affected it a big deal, and there's a lot of complicated situations happening in Thailand now. Even as we discussed yesterday, their economy is dropping as well because people are starting to lose faith in the government. They don't want General Prayuth Chan-o-cha, although he's the prime minister now, self-appointed prime minister. They don't have faith in him and his government. And when your own people don't have faith in you, also the foreign investors start losing faith in Thailand as well. So that is one problem that they're facing in terms of economy. And now, after the tourists got killed, it affected their tourism as well, because other countries started being more wary, being more careful about visiting Thailand. So it is good that he's being proactive. He's taking some actions. He went to meet the Myanmar officials to discuss about this matter, but of course that's not enough. The most important thing here he has to do is actually gain the trust of his people first.
So by showing this positive movement, by visiting Myanmar to solve certain issues, will definitely set a different image, but also we have to see the result of it, because since he initiated this movement and to solve certain issues between countries, for example Thailand and then Myanmar, or Thailand and then the other neighboring countries, so he will need to work harder to gain the people's trust in this matter.
And another country that is also showing interest in Myanmar is Singapore. and they have decided to step in and help Myanmar with some legal training.
Legal training, with the signing of two memorandum of understanding, which is called MOUs, this week, Singapore will be helping Myanmar's legal officers and lawyers to improve their legislative system and practices, which is actually good news to Myanmar again.
And such partnership in the legal field is actually the first one for Myanmar with a Commonwealth country. And their senior minister of State for Law and Education, Indrani Raja, is Myanmar's capital Naypyidaw to sign the agreements. And the two countries will also exchange legal materials, organize study visits, have attachments, and also seminars.
That's a really good news. And in addition to that, the officers, they'll be given a legal training in areas like trade and investment, technology, criminal law, and then learn how to better draft laws as well as tackle difficult legal issues.
It seems that Myanmar actually has it's more capable of attracting investors now as opposed to Thailand, because we have countries actually stepping in, like you mentioned just a few minutes ago, that they're coming in, they're setting up their companies in Myanmar, they're trying to create more job opportunities, and now we have Singapore stepping in to help. And you don't do these things unless you have faith in the country and in their administration.
And then there are so many opportunities, and the country itself, Myanmar, has lots of potential, not only in terms of economic, but also in the other areas such as investment and also the other art and culture side as well. So definitely it's becoming one of the hotspot in ASEAN countries.
And Ms. Indrani also added saying, if you're asking an investor to put in money where he does not know exactly how he's supposed to do it, what his investment vehicles are, and what happens if something goes wrong, then the investors are going to be hesitant. So this is very important to show that Singapore clearly has trust and faith in Myanmar, and they are confident that Myanmar can handle it, and they have clear avenues of resolution in the event that something actually goes wrong.
Definitely, and Singapore has a pretty strong legal system, and they're pretty advanced. So it will definitely give benefits and a lot of advice to undeveloped countries such as Myanmar. So they will become more of like investor-friendly countries to look into more these issues.
And of course, the most important ASEAN 2015 integration that we are all looking forward to. And it's interesting that they highlight here saying that we always refer to the ASEAN economic integration as a day where, it's just going to completely change everything, like talking about the December 31st, 2012. It's like the end of one era and the beginning of another era.
Exactly.
It's something magical is going to happen. But of course, that's not how it's going to be. There are a lot of steps that we have to take as well as citizens of this region. And it's not a miracle. That we really have to work hard if we want to go for this ASEAN 2015 integration.
And then apart from that, it's also really important to aware of ASEAN itself. The public awareness of this ASEAN among these 10 countries and plus other countries really need to know what ASEAN does for people around this area and what kind of things that they really want to work on. So 2015 ASEAN it is important, but like you said, we have to take step by step.
And this ASEAN economic integration, it's interesting that Habito, what's that?
Habito, yes.
He commented that this ASEAN economic integration is not a competition, it's a complementation. So it's not about us competing with other countries trying to better. Of course, it's good to have a healthy amount of competition in here. We want to compete, we want to have a healthy growth, but what this really is about is complementation, how we fill each other's gaps, it's like completing each other in a way.
Yes, we're filling
it
each
sounds
other
so romantic,
gaps.
but
Yes.
it's not. It's because there are countries that are advanced, there are countries are still kind of lagging behind. So when these two countries come together, they fill in each other's strength and weaknesses. What this country doesn't have, this country can provide. And what this country has, it can, share with one another, and in that way we grow as the entire
But that's
region.
a that's very positive side of it. But then on the other hand, we can look into very politically, where all those countries which already have powers, they tend to control over to these poorer countries because they are weak, and then the weak, it doesn't have much say on it, so they tend to follow the majority, which has more power. So it could lead to a bit of negative side, and then it will create more political issues. But definitely ASEAN 2015 will look into all this, take into consideration for the better result.
And also hopefully countries that are gearing towards democracy, it will help them to hasten the process, because in Myanmar they're going for a political reform, and of course people in Thailand are also not happy. And Indonesia just got their new fresh air with Jokowi being elected, and hopefully all this heads to a positive direction. We get all our democratic reforms, and all our economic integration can be achieved, and which is why another thing that's being stressed here is also the small and medium enterprises. For them, they are being encouraged to actually spread their business all over the region, all over Southeast Asia, so it will aid them on further availing the opportunities under AEC.
So let's see how ASEAN itself will actually do the right things.
Right.
Yes, for 2015.
So that's all the time that we have for our breakfast news commentary this morning.
And thank you for listening to us. And don't forget to leave us feedback on our social channels of Facebook and YouTube. And then do listen back to us at durianasean.com.
And of course, you can also download our TuneIn app. If you're on the move, you don't have your computer with you, just download the app and look for Durian ASEAN, and you can be tuned into us. So we'll be back in a bit for our blast from the grassroots. This is Gowri.
And this is Grace.